Welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Whether you're a pastor, youth leader, ministry volunteer, parent, or student, we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource for equipping and encouragement when it comes to your ministry and leadership influence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, welcome to a new Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. My name's Eric, and I will be your host. We're in a new season. Jeff, we have Jeff back. Jeff, how are you?
Yes, Jeff, the anchor of the new season. That's what people often say of me.
The people have spoken, and they said that they want less of me and more of you. What do you think about that, Jeff?
I don't know. Maybe it's a compliment. I'm not sure.
Oh my. It's so fun to do these podcasts. We really do want to be of value, be a resource to you, to your ministry. And so for this season, season 4, it's hard to believe that we're in our 4th season of these, but we're over 100 episodes now, Jeff. We've,
Wow.
I think, built trust and credibility, which is kind of our goal. We want people to know our heartbeat here at Momentum and what we're all about. And so to that end, these episodes are really for you, our listeners. We want to tackle any tough topic. We want to be a resource. We want to add value to you and your ministry. And so for season 4, we're really kind of targeting ministry professionals. We're going to get creative, and we'll share more about this as the season goes along. But be excited about some of the resources that we're going to continue to develop and the ways that we're looking to just encourage you to have maximum impact for God's kingdom. So, Jeff, I figured with that being said, we should probably talk about professionalism in ministry. What the heck is a ministry professional? How do you define that term? What is that in our world?
You know, it's actually a subject I care a lot about, believe it or not. We here at my church that I pastor, we have quite a few interns and residents, and one of the first talks I give to them is a professionalism talk. You're probably going to hear several coughing breaks during this interview. This was my gift from Momentum Youth Conference that came home with me, and I still haven't quite shaken it. But I'm actually very passionate about professionalism in ministry, because I think in the past and even sometimes in the present, from the outside world, ministry is what you do when you don't know how to do something else. And especially youth ministry would be a real example. Like youth ministry, the person who's a youth minister is the guy or the girl that liked youth group and wanted to live in it a little bit longer. And I know that when I was a youth pastor, that always offended me. And then as a pastor, professionalism was, well, you don't have another defined job skill set, so you should be a pastor. And that actually remarkably offends me, since I run an organization larger than most people's, or probably the top 5 or 10% of organizations in the world would be the size of the organizations that I run. So I always get a little defensive and a little bit irked by that. But then I think over the years have seen that we are the ones, ministry professionals are the ones who have fed that misconception and still do a little bit. So when I think of somebody who's professional, I think of someone who is rewarded financially or paid financially because of their skill set, and someone who needs to continually earn or deserve those dollars because we continually improve and expand upon our skill set. So if I go into ministry, I need to be better at ministry every year that I'm in it. And that is not a mindset that people often think. They often think, if I'm in ministry because my time's freed up so I can hang out with people. And there's some truth to that, but all of us, whether you're a youth pastor, an associate, or senior pastor, you're running organizational things as well. And many people get into ministry because they like doing ministry. And when I read the Bible, what the Bible says is required of me is that I equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. So um, I do still go to the hospital and I do still visit people. I did it just last night because of an emergency. But my job biblically is not to do all of the work. It's not to be a paid participant in ministry. My job, even biblically, is to be a facilitator and a trainer in ministry. And that's something that I need to get better and better at. So a professional is one who thinks that way. A professional is one who's a consistent learner. A professional is one who is motivated to self-improve at what they do. I need to be better at teaching, better at evangelism, better at teaching discipleship than I was last year. And a professional is one who gives their life to the pursuit of that dedication. There was a time, and I'm not pining for the old days, but there was a time in history where the strongest leaders, the most talented people, the highest intellects were the pastors. And so if you think about Harvard and Yale and different Ivy League schools, they all started as seminaries.
Yeah.
When you think about the most learned person in a given town or a village, it was often the pastor that had those things, the most educated person. I'm not at all saying we need to go back to those days, but I am saying we need to have that mindset. And there was a day when the most talented people, that many missionaries to Africa and South America, it was the Reverend Dr. David Livingston. It was the Reverend Doctor, where you were a master of God's word, but also a PhD in anthropology. And you used all of your skill set to help the gospel make sense. That mindset would still exist in things like education. So many of the high school math teachers would have a master's degree. Many of the people who are high school administrators would have a PhD. And I believe that youth workers should think of themselves in that vein. Many business leaders have an MBA. They're really skilled and really studied with knowing how to lead organizationally. And when a new technology or a new need in the market presents itself, they would, as a professional, they would go and they would master that. Well, I think a senior pastor should think that way. Yeah. Times change, how you present the gospel change, the size and the scope of the church or the organization you lead changes. You should professionally lean into that instead of hiding behind a seminary degree, and which I believe in real strongly. You need to expand your mindset of how do I lead on bigger and broader ways. So to me, it's a mindset. It is not the invasion of business into the church. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is I do everything that I do to the glory of God. And if that means that I studied theology and doctrine, I'm going to do that to the glory of God. If that means that I have to learn how to manage people, then I have to learn that. And I'm doing that to the glory of God. And that's what a professional does and how they think.
Jeff, that's so good. I love what you're saying about just even the understanding the foundational principles here in thinking about being a ministry professional. It's not about perfection, but it is about excellence. And so we would believe in, and
Yes.
we can say that in the difference of how we do things, everything with excellence, in that difference, it'll point people to Christ. give our reputation of people that we want to be men and leaders of God, that we leverage those things for the gospel and we do things with excellence. Again, not perfection, but with excellence. And so being mindful of that, being a lifelong learner. In the front cover of every Bible I wrote a quote that I learned as a student. If you want to be a leader, you've got to be a reader, right? And so
Yep.
applying those principles, that stuff is a big deal. And I think sometimes, Jeff, there's two stereotypes that come along with this, and I want to just address them and we can kind of move on here. But momentum is very serious about both the ministry professional, that full-time vocational leader. We want to equip you. We want to add value to you. We want to be a resource for you. But there is this other side. When you think about the core of a healthy church, there's the missional marketplace leaders, as we would say. And so what our heartbeat here at Momentum is, we want to come alongside of the pastors, the church ministry professionals, and help them, like you said, to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. Not that you're the only one that gets to do ministry because you're in ministry. And so what we've done is we want to come alongside and help both of those people and leaders to lead and to value each other, that the pastors aren't just looking at the missional marketplace leaders and valuing them for the checks that they're going to write to fund all the things in the church, but valuing their mind and heart as well. That we call Momentum Marketplace. We can talk about that on another episode. But for this context, we're talking about being professional in your ministry as the full-time vocational leader. So, Jeff, in that context, understanding all of that, what does professionalism look like in pastoral ministry? You're not just talking about, and we've talked about this a little bit, you're not just talking about like being a theologian and locking yourself in your office for 50 hours a week to write the sermon that will be 30 or 45 minutes. When you say professionalism in ministry, in pastoral ministry, expound on that. What does that look like?
I'll start off with like some very, very practical things, okay? Because I think this helps us warm up to this. So if I'm going to be a ministry professional, here's a place to start. Number one, comb your hair. Right? So if you want to be taken seriously and you want to be trusted by parents, don't look like their 17-year-old who just rolled out of bed. So you take a shower, you comb your hair. If you're a guy, you shave, right? And you show up in environments with adults and environments with students as an adult, not as a student. Be clean. One of the things that when I talk to our interns here, one of the things I say to them is, any of you ever been in my car, my truck? And some of them have, over time. I said, what is remarkably striking about my truck? And it's fascinating what they'll say. They'll say, it's spotless. I'm like, right. Because grown-ups don't treat their car like a storage unit for fast food trash.
Yes.
So like keep your office clean, because that's what a professional would do. And I know that stuff sounds petty, but it makes you not a college student anymore. And so there's little things like that. Like if I'm, as a professional, if I'm in the office all day, I might have flip-flops and jeans and a t-shirt on. If I'm going to a meeting in our community, I'm going to put a nicer pair of shoes on and socks and a button-down shirt. If I'm going to do a funeral, I'm going to put a sports jacket on at a minimum. And if the person is older and their family is more formal, I'm going to put a suit and tie on. So all that is like a professional way of thinking. I'm reading the circumstances around me, and I'm doing that. If I'm in student ministry, if I am meeting a bunch of kids to play basketball, I'm going to conduct myself a certain way with the kids. If I'm meeting a bunch of parents or there's kids and parents, I'm going to prefer the parent, and I'm going to conduct myself that way. I would say in professionalism, become an expert. The high school teacher who's 25 is the expert in history who is teaching the kids history. And so as a parent, when I interact with that person, I'm interacting with an educated person who has a set of expertise. Well, as a youth minister, become an expert on social media and teach parents what Snapchat is and what it isn't. Become an expert on AI. Become an expert on parenting, what the Bible says about parenting, not your personal experiences about parenting, and become an expert. Professionalism looks like knowing your strengths. If you're not good at organizing all the vehicles for the trip, find a volunteer who will help you do that. If you're not good at being up front, then find somebody who can speak. They just play to your strengths back and forth. That's what a professional would do. And then the last kind of really hyper practical one I would add to that is you need to work. So I see this a lot in not just student ministry pastors, but pastors in general. And I say this in love, but ministry is known for being a lazy vocation. And it's also known for being a whiny vocation. And I love you guys. So and I'm one of you. Okay. But, a day of ministry is not 3 breakfasts, a lunch, and then an afternoon on the golf course. Because the professional who's in the marketplace, they can't arrange their day that way. Now they can once in a while, but they're taking time off. They don't consider that to be work. When you say, I work 40 hours a week and then I have to work the weekends too. Well, the marketplace professional in your church probably works 50 plus hours a week, and then they volunteer all weekend. So don't whine about it. I have to work every Christmas. Well, so does the UPS guy, and so does the firefighter. It's just the vocation you're in. There's nothing martyrdom related considering to you working holidays. So it's stuff like that. I think a ministry professional should have a hyper strong work ethic, because we're not earning our money. It's being given to us. To me, a ministry work week is a minimum of 50 hours, probably more like 60, because your key volunteer is working 40 to 50 hours and then giving you another 10 hours a week of their free time. To me, work ethic is creating your own work. So that's what's unique about ministry. I can make it as lazy as I want to make it, or I can make it as aggressive as I want to make it. Well, you should be creating your own work. It needs to be smart work, and that's probably a different episode. But it's not sitting around waiting to receive instructions from the people above you or your board, and it's not responding to people complaining about you. It's you being proactive in all of those things. So I think hyper practical things like that. When I talk to our staff that's fresh out of high school or fresh out of college, and I talk to them about shifting to a professional mindset, what I say to them is that one of the big shifts you have to make is literally until you're out of college, literally your work has been assigned to you. You will go to school at this time, you will do these assignments, you will do this homework, and we will repeat that action. When you get into the professional world, none of that exists. And so you have to be a creator of your own work. This is where having mission statements and vision statements, having defined goals, working off a master calendar, uh, setting times that you're going to get up in the morning and drive your day for. All that kind of stuff plays into that. And it's what makes you respectable, and it's what makes you professional. I want the man and woman in my church who does a comparable job to me. They're usually business owners or medical professionals or first responders. That would be comparable to what I do. I don't get the summers off like a school teacher. I'm on call 24 hours a day, like sometimes doctors are. I have to create my own work and goals like a small business owner would. I want those types of individuals to look at me and say, Jeff has the same work ethic that I do. And when I think about I had to drop everything and go deal with my business in the middle of vacation, Jeff is willing to do that also. When I think I've been a pastor for 31 years, which means I've been on call 24/7 every day for the last 31 years. And so a doctor is often on call, a first responder is often on call. So I just want those. I'm going to measure my professionalism and my work ethic against vocations like that. And I'm not saying that other vocations don't work hard, don't misunderstand me, but I'm looking for something similar. If I can be professional, because if you're a cop and you're 23, I want you to show up and know what you're doing. Just like I want a youth pastor who's 23 or a youth director who's 23 to show up and know what they're doing. Yeah. If you've been working in a field for 25 years, I would expect you to be an expert in that field. Just like they should be able to look at me and say, like Jeff, are you 31 years into this? Shouldn't you know what you're doing by now? Right, because I constantly improved. And I think that's the mindset that ministry professionals have to have. It's not pastor of lunch. It's not I play golf and I'm so overburdened that I had to go on call that night. I'm not talking about workaholism. I'm not talking about burnout. I'm talking about God's people gave God's money to God's church and you take it as a salary. And I need to put the right work ethic and the right effort in response to the fact that I'm paid directly by God. And I need to respond in those ways.
That's very good. So Jeff, let's go one click deeper maybe into that conversation. For those ministry professionals who maybe are like, they're trying to proactively think about, they've been doing this for a while and they're like, man, we maybe need to relook at our goals, our mission, our values, our vision of the church. If you're the point person on that, or maybe if you're somebody that works within the church and you're like, yeah, we lack that. How do you manage your time? How do you get them to lead in that direction? What does that process look like to establish those things? And how does that then dictate your time, your priorities, what you're responsible for, and how you delegate some of those other things?
Yeah, it depends on what seat you're on the bus, so to say, right? So if you're a senior pastor, that is a number one priority for you.
Correct.
Vision and mission is the number one priority. And some senior pastors will say, no, my number one priority is to shepherd the people. And I would argue with you lovingly, but I would say, no, your number one priority is to make sure the people are shepherded. That's very different than you doing it. They might say my number one priority is preaching. And I would say, no, the priority is that the people are being fed and taught the word of God. Who does that, how many times a year that's done, and how that's done is really up for debate. Because look at Jesus and Paul and the New Testament, that was done in a variety of different ways. So what I would say is those things fall under mission and vision. My main job as a senior leader is to look and say, is my church honoring Jesus? And do I have the church positioned in such a way that the lampstand of Jesus can burn brightly at our church? For me to do that, I need to help the people be organized. So when I say you need to serve Jesus, invest your life with other people, right? Love God, love your neighbor. I read that once in a book called the Bible. So if those are the two things, my people are going to look at me and say, how do I love my neighbor? When do I love my neighbor? What do I do? Where do I do it? Well, that's what programs, you're just helping to organize that so that some people do that organically, most people don't. So I'm just helping them do that. But I'm setting that vision and that mission, and all I'm doing is drawing a context to it. So, for instance, at Grace Church, where I pastor, we have 8 values. It's the Bible, it's the statement of faith, and it's the 8 values. And the 8 values are how and where and what. It's what makes us distinct as a church. It does not make us competitive. It just is like, this is what we feel like God has called us to. So you have to be able to set that and then lead people toward it. Now, if you're not sure how to do that, what you need to do then as a professional is you need to go get coaching. So you join Momentum Pro, or you go to a conference, or you hire a consultant. And I'll tell you that, as a pastor I've been a long time pastor and I have a pretty big church. I still do that. I get brain cramps. I have blind spots. And then the culture changes. Yeah. So like, how do you reach a 24-year-old? Well, I have to go study that now. I'm 53, right? And I have to be disciplined in making that happen. How do you reorganize post-COVID? Well, I go to a learning cohort. It's a version of a Momentum Pro that I'm a participant in. And I'm like, yeah, what are you guys doing? Like, I'm always learning that stuff so that I can help our people engage it as much as they can. Now, if you're not in that senior chair, if you're in another staff role, a youth ministry chair, children's, whatever, worship, I'm doing the same thing, but in my area. And this is where, like a youth leader, for example, you should be the expert. You should be able to tell your senior pastor what's happening in the generation that you're closest to. If you're a worship pastor, I'm making up examples, you should know what the cutting edge songs are and what the new ideas are, and how people are responding differently than they were 10 years ago. If you are the director of children's ministry, you should know how kids learn differently than they did 5 years ago. You should be coming with ideas about what technology and how that interacts with the kid's life and how it's always morphed together. If you are of a different race, you should be bringing the experience of your race and your culture to bear, and you should be a voice for that. Not an opponent, not a complainer, but a voice. I have a friend, a dear friend, who's of a different race than me. He tells me when I have a blind spot, and he tells me, he's just loving me as a brother, right? If you're a female on a mostly male staff, you need to bring your experience as a female to the table, and men vice versa, etc. So you're not passively saying, what's my schedule for next semester? You're actively bringing that in, and you're saying, if this is the vision and the mission of the church, under that umbrella, what's the vision and the mission of the children's ministry? What's the vision and the mission of the worship department, etc.? Yep. And helping all that to flow together so that that's continuous for the people who are involved in our ministry. They don't, when somebody volunteers for children's ministry, as an example, or they volunteer to be on the counting team, they're not responding to a passion for finances. They're responding to the call of the church. So it's the staff's job and the elders' job to make that response easy and to make that response make sense to the greater vision.
Yeah.
We all get writer's cramp. We all get confused, me too. So that's where you make it a discipline to be in a learning cohort, make it a discipline to listen to certain podcasts. Yeah. And you're just weaving that into who you are as a leader.
Jeff, I love it because you're not only giving good information, but you're foreshadowing a lot of where we're going to go with episodes on this season. And so I would say listen to the Momentum podcast, because we want to provide some of those contacts, some of those resources, some value add pieces. And throughout this season, we'll be interviewing people in each of those areas. So if anything that Jeff said piques your interest, come check out future episodes. In fact, I'll even give you a teaser on next week's episode. We're going to talk about burnout. So if you've been listening and you're like, I think that's me, maybe I'm on the like 60, 75 hour side and you're burnout, check back next week for that conversation. But Jeff, before we go, I have one last question for you. I think this is maybe something that as you're explaining this idea of being a professional in ministry, having that work ethic, having the drive, then setting those vision, the mission, your goals. How do you then decide whatever seat you're in on your team? How do you take those things and break that out then based on your time as you plan your work week? How do you decide what things get priority and X amount of time within your framework of those 50 hours? What strategy, tips, encouragement would you give to people who are kind of wrestling and thinking that through?
So we could do a whole episode, and maybe we will in the future, just on the idea of having a master schedule. And so I get teased a little bit because my whole life functions off of master schedule. But I had a mentor named Newt Larson that taught me that when I was young. And it's one of the best tools that any mentor ever pushed me towards. So what you do is you take your week and you break it into blocks. And there's things that you do consistently, and then there's things that you consistently plan to be inconsistent. And you just work through a master schedule. And so you could look at my schedule as an example 3 weeks from now and already know 3 weeks from now what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. So you start with the big chunks. Ready? The biggest chunk I start with is actually my family. So it's when is my day off, and when is my my time that I am able to be a father and the husband that I need to be. I block that. It's designated unsurrenderable time. What I have found with family is you cannot find balance in ministry. What you can find is correction. So, for instance, if I'm going to be on the road, or I'm going to go into Christmas season or Easter season, really busy times. If you're in student ministry, it's probably your summers where times are really, really busy. I'm going to pre-plan time to build up equity with my family, and then pre-plan time to pay off a deficit with it. So I know that I'm going to be gone, kind of out of the pocket for a couple of weeks. I'm going to schedule extra time with my family so that we have relational equity.
That's good.
When I come back from being gone, I'm going to schedule extra time to replace the deficit I created. I'm not going to be home at 5 o'clock for dinner. It's not happening. If you're in ministry, you work weekends. So just give it up. By the way, so do cops, doctors, nurses, the UPS guy. Like, don't whine about it. It's the career we chose, right? But I'm going to plan around that correctly. After that, I'm going to look and say, what are the job responsibilities that are priorities for me. So if I'm a senior leader, I'm going to preach every weekend. I have to get ready for that. If you're a student leader, you're going to give a lesson every Wednesday night, kind of thing. So that needs to be in a rhythm. Then I'm going to prioritize forward moving goals. So as a leader, I prioritize leadership development. It's on my schedule. I'm going to schedule leadership development long before I'm going to schedule counseling appointments. Because I know that if you invest in leadership for 5 years, it pays off for 25 years. I know that is a seed I have to keep sowing because it's a tree that grows slowly. Then I'm going to, in office time, admin time, etc., but I'm going to, through block scheduling and a master schedule, I'm going to control my priorities. If you call me and say, do you want to go play golf? I'm going to look at you and say, no, I can't. I'm booked. The only thing that interrupts my master schedule are emergencies. So last week, a dear friend of mine and one of the longtime people of our church had a heart issue, died, and was revived and was in a coma for 4 days. I dropped everything. I was on vacation, actually. I dropped everything. And I looked at my wife and my children. I'm like, this is our friend. And they were like, you're right. Heidi was like, go to the hospital. What are you doing here? Quit talking to me, kind of thing. So there's always an emergency, but I'm going to define what an emergency is. An emergency is not me being Google for you. An emergency is like, it's a life and death thing. And then you just flush your schedule and figure it out from there. So master schedule. And like I said, that could be a whole episode, but getting control of your schedule quickly, getting parameters in place of what you say yes to and what you say no to quickly is actually what balance. So Heidi and I raised 6 children, run 2 businesses, and I'm in ministry full time my whole adult life. And that master scheduling is what allowed me to organize my life in such a way that I was able to be present, not be an absentee father, etc., through that whole process.
Jeff, thank you for sharing that and your 31 years of experience and trial and error and how you've learned these things. We really do want this to be of value, not only this episode, but future episodes. This whole
By the way, you're getting old when you keep talking about the exact number of years you've been in ministry.
There you go.
It's a classic sign that it's an old guy talking. Yeah.
It's not 10 plus years. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Last few years, I was 31.
And 7 months and 2 weeks and 3 months.
Yeah.
But who's counting?
Yeah, no, I'm right. Who's counting?
I love it. I think this is very good. To our friends who are listening to this, again, we barely even touched the surface of some of this conversation. If you have questions, if there's a way we can be a resource to you to help in any way beyond this scope, if you're trying to think, how do you get your schedule where you're looking at emails and not being dictated by that, or how you communicate and how do you value feedback? There's all kinds of pieces within this that we would say would go into the context of being a ministry professional. We're happy to help. We're happy to be a resource. We can do more episodes on this kind of stuff. So reach out, let us know, email us, info@buildmomentum.org. If this is helpful to you, to others, as always, please share it on your social media or send it to somebody who maybe you think needs to hear this. So if you're a senior pastor and your team sent this to you, call us.
Yeah.
We love you. We love you very much. Thank you for tuning in to another episode.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you found it to be valuable. And if you did, would you share it with someone else in your network who might enjoy it? Also, would you please go on and subscribe, rate, and review it? That way you don't miss any more and somebody else will be able to find it too. Also, because we want to be your trusted resource, If you have a question or topic that you would like us to discuss on an upcoming episode, send that to us via email to info@buildmomentum.org, or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. You can find us there at Momentum Ministry Partners. Also, if you need more information on our ministry, be sure to check out our website at buildmomentum.org. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.